Hi, my name is Pete Bosch. I am the immediate past district governor for District 6270. The session you're about to see was first delivered on October 4th at the Joint Zone Institute for Zones 29 and 25B. Hope you find it useful and it gives you some ideas that you'd like to run with. So as we're going through this session, if you haven't ever interacted with a chatbot, I would strongly suggest that you go to chat.openai.com, the link you see on the page, or scan this QR code and create yourself an account, or I think you can just use it anonymously. In any case, I hope you will try some of the prompts that we discuss, that we show over the course of the next 40-45 minutes. So as we started thinking about this session, the first consideration was who's going to be the audience, and we decided that we'd like to cover a broad range, people who have heard of AI, haven't used it, but are willing to give it a shot, all the way up to people who, let's say, have not quite written software that uses AI. So pretty wide range. Because of that wide range, we had to cut back from the breadth of AI. As you probably know, AI includes image and video generators, coding assistants, data tools, a whole lot of different things. So we kind of had to cut it down from that. So we decided that chatbots was a great opening topic because it's very accessible. You don't need in fact, you don't need any technical background. It just seemed like a good opening point. Now, once we had decided that chatbots was kind of an appropriate topic for this session, we had to think about which AI chatbots. So, as you know, as you may know, there's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, probably a dozen others, and we decided that rather than switch back and forth between them, because really the skills that you use on one are pretty applicable to all of the others, that we would focus on the one that was most widely used and recognized, and of course that's ChatGPT. Now the point of this session is to show you how you can use these chatbots, ChatGPT, to do your job as a Rotary leader. So it's going to be very heavily demo focused. I think there are 15 demos that we're going to go through. So strap in, we're going to have a good time here. So there are a few things you need to remember before we kind of dive into the pool. First of all is that accuracy is not guaranteed. It's getting better, but ChatGPT, all the different chatbots are susceptible to something called hallucination, which is when you ask it to explain something or to show something or to prove something, if there's a piece missing from that point that it wants to make, it is liable to make something up to fill that gap. This was probably most shockingly demonstrated a couple of years back when an attorney asked ChatGPT to write a legal brief, and ChatGPT made up some case law and citations to make the point that lawyer was trying to make. As you might have read or seen in the news a couple of years ago, he ended up getting pulled up in front of the judge and read the Riot Act, not literally, figuratively, and there were threats of him being disbarred. So if you're going to use ChatGPT to create something that you're hanging your reputation on, please, please, please make sure you check the facts that it relies on. Additionally, so the structure of a chatbot is that the chatbot you interact with is really just a front end to a brain, so to speak, in the back, which is called a large language model. And these things are huge, and they are trained on the entire contents of the internet and then some. And as you're probably aware, the internet can have quite a lot of bias to it. So occasionally you will find that something coming out of a chatbot, ChatGPT in this case, will be somewhat biased. So you need to be aware of that, alert to that, and ready to try to counter that bias. Privacy and confidentiality, those are things you need to worry about, because it is possible that anything you upload to ChatGPT or any of the other chatbots, I'm always referring to all of the chatbots unless I say otherwise. So anything you upload to ChatGPT can show up on the web. Reason being that unless a particular feature is turned on, and I'll tell you about that in a second, anything that you upload will be used or can be used to train the next generation of ChatGPT. At that point, it becomes something that ChatGPT, quote unquote, knows and can share in other answers. And if it shares in other answers to somebody who then publishes that information, obviously that results in your information, the information that you put up there, ending up on the broader web. There is a use case a couple of years ago when Samsung, someone at Samsung was asking ChatGPT to review a product launch plan. It reviewed that product launch plan, and the next thing anybody knew, the characteristics of that product launch plan were all over the web. And obviously this caused some fairly major problems for Samsung. So be aware of that. I told you I would tell you how to avoid that in ChatGPT. If you go to settings, there is a checkbox that says, do not use my data for training future models. If you check that, then OpenAI, the manufacturers of ChatGPT, assure you that your data will not end up going that route. There is a further question of, do you trust OpenAI? That's up to you. I can't tell you one way or the other. I personally have a middling to larger middling degree of trust in them. Anyway, right. Learning curve. As you start to use ChatGPT, you'll find that the answers you get maybe don't fit the question you asked quite right, or you don't get the kind of information you're looking for. Stick with it. As you learn more and more about how to interact with it, and particularly at the end of this session, there will be a bunch of downloads. And one of those download items is a website that will give you training, and it's not a long course, but training in how to form prompts, which are the questions you ask ChatGPT. If you do that and practice, you will get very good, and you'll be mostly happy with the information you get out of ChatGPT. So another point, important point, is retain your own voice. Make sure that you don't sort of blanket copy, paste, and send. The verbiage and the constructs that ChatGPT uses, absent you training it to sound like you, and that's a more advanced topic, but absent that, the constructs that it uses are quite recognizable, especially to someone who's read a lot of stuff coming out of ChatGPT. So if it's a sales report and it doesn't matter that it's not in your own voice, sure, go ahead and do it. As you can see here, the top bullet, if it's a love letter, maybe don't use AI at all. There's a whole spectrum between those two use cases, and really it's up to you to decide if you want to use AI and how much editing and revision you want to do. So keep that in mind. And finally, there are some concerns with AI note takers, and I'm going to talk about the concerns, and you probably want to read through the policy recommendations at the bottom. First of all, there's a confidentiality risk. If you convene a board meeting, and in that board meeting you talk about, and this happens in a lot of board meetings, you talk about some topic that you don't want the details of the discussion to get out, maybe only the resolution that comes out of it, If you are the one convening the meeting and you are the one with the note taker and you are going to edit those notes following the meeting and prior to them being released, then obviously you have control of what pieces of the meeting are let out. On the other hand, if someone else in the board meeting is running their note taker, you don't know for sure that they're going to edit that, and you don't know for sure that they aren't going to release it. So you could end up with what amounts to a fairly authoritative record of what was said when and by who about what, ending up becoming public knowledge. So be aware of that. Platform conflicts. Debbie High, who is a past district governor of 5930, called me to talk about a situation where she had been convening a meeting and her note taker, which was not, well, I don't know if the meeting was on Zoom, but let's say for the sake of this discussion that it was, she was not using the Zoom AI assistant. She was using some third-party AI note taker. And somebody else logged into that meeting using the same third party's note taker. And what ended up happening was the new note taker bounced her note taker out of the meeting. The end result of this was, at the end of the meeting, she was left without any notes. She managed to figure it out, call the person who had also had their note taker, and got a copy of the notes and was able to make things better. But this can be a problem, so be aware of this. And finally, a lot of times with meetings, well, not a lot of times, but occasionally with meetings, somebody will send their note taker and not attend themselves. And you need to think about whether that's really in the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish with the meeting. So I hope you've taken a look at the policy recommendations and they've given you some ideas of what to do down the road. So what we're going to do today, as I said, we're going from utter noob with AI all the way up to, quote, pros. And in the process of making that progression, we're going to look at some of the use cases that newbies encounter on their way to becoming experienced, that experienced users encounter on the way to becoming pros. And then we're going to talk about a few advanced tools, custom chatbots and knowledge bases, which are great ways of collecting knowledge about a particular topic. For example, the governance documents for your district and RI. And then answering ad hoc questions from users about those topics. Finally, we'll have a short discussion about ways that you can get involved, what to do next, and kind of how to grow this this tool use. So, as I mentioned before, the brain behind the ChatGPT is called a large language model, and it's trained on essentially everything on the web. So it knows a whole lot of stuff. So the first thing we want to do, the first thing we want to discuss and show is how to take advantage of all of that information out there, to have it answer questions in a way that's a little more ready to use than, say, Google. So we're going to have 3 demos, and the first one is we're going to ask for 3 examples of Rotary's role in global health. Let's take a look at that. Okay, the prompt says, you're a Rotary historian, that's its role. Summarize 3 ways Rotary has contributed to global health, and it's for a president writing a newsletter. So there's a role, a task, and a purpose. If you take the course that's described in the downloads, you'll see that this is an often used construct for a prompt. I don't know if you looked at that, but at the output, but it was in fact 3 examples of Rotary's role in global health. Next, let's look at explaining the 4-way test to a 15-year-old. So the role, the 4-way test, and look at the words and metaphors that are being used in this. They really are fairly well tuned to kind of the mind of a 15-year-old. So you've gotten what you wanted, and you've gotten it for the audience that you were looking to serve. Now let's look at how district designated funds work. This is a particularly thorny question, and as you read through this, you'll see that not only is it fairly clear in terms of how it describes the program, but it's also fairly comprehensive. Now, if you were paying attention at the very beginning, you'll notice that it did get something wrong. It described the return to districts of donated funds at 50%. As probably most people know, that's 47.5 and 47.5 now, rather than 50-50. So, like I said, keep in mind that you do need to fact check. So now, let's look at a few ways. We've kind of covered the sorts of things that a newbie might do with ChatGPT. Let's look at some of the things they might do in progressing toward a more experienced user. We'll look at creating a president's newsletter, we'll look at clarifying and summarizing documents, and we'll look at event planning. So with regards to a president's newsletter, let's say we want 3 paragraphs for a president's newsletter, and the topic will be service projects this month. The tone will be warm and encouraging. So we create a prompt to that effect, and you can see we did a winter coat drive, a meal train, and a practice interview session with our Interact Club. So you'll get 3 paragraphs that you could drop directly into the newsletter, but probably ought to edit for your own voice. But fairly comprehensive and fairly usable. So now let's talk about summarizing and clarifying documents. I don't know about your club, but I have seen some club bylaws that looked like they were written by an overeager attorney on some sort of caffeinated beverage. Let's take a look at one. Now, this isn't a real club bylaw. I had ChatGPT create it, but you get the point as you read it of how thick it is and how difficult to understand. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask ChatGPT to translate it so that normal humans can understand it, and we'll paste the hunk of text that was so confusing into the prompt. So there it is, and we hit go. And what you'll end up with, you see, is 3 paragraphs that very clearly describe in very accessible English what that really thick paragraph meant, and offer to condense it further if you'd like. So the next thing we're going to do, if you're, let's say for the sake of this example, that your club does 2 fundraisers, they're getting a little long in the tooth, people are not as interested in them anymore, let's say maybe they're bringing in less money than they used to, and the club is interested in trying a new kind of fundraiser. And what they decide on, for whatever reason, is doing a murder mystery dinner fundraiser. And the problem is nobody knows how to do this. Well, okay, that's probably not wise, but for the sake of this example, let's say that the club is okay with doing this. So let's ask it to create a plan for putting on that murder mystery dinner fundraiser. Now, as you see the results spooling by, look at the range of different areas that the plan addresses, the depth in each of those areas that it goes to, and the choices that it implies here. And not implies, it makes explicit. Understand that in each of these different areas and each of these different bullet points, you can ask it to give you more information about that particular topic. So this really would just be the start in developing the plan. You would go back and forth on this a number of times until you had something that was really meaty that you could get together with your club to review. Again, double check everything, sanity check the plan, the items, and so on. Make sure you've got people who can do it. Make sure you understand it, but in any case, you end up with a pretty good starting point. So the next one, as district governor, I was asked to present probably, I don't know, 15 to 30, not 30, 15 to 25, 15 to 20 times over the course of my DG year. Some of those involved giving a speech, and so I want to show you how powerful ChatGPT can be in helping you develop that speech. So we're going to do, just for the sake of an example here, a 1-minute speech about the value of every Rotarian every year. So draft a 1-minute speech about the value of E-Ray, and it thinks a bit. While it's thinking, I'm going to have some coffee. Yum. So here we go. Now let's say you read through this and you want to make it your own, but structurally it isn't quite right. So you don't want to, maybe you'd rather not just kind of rip and tear and swap paragraphs and whatnot. Let's say you want to get your rough draft closer to what you want to go with. So let's say you want to open with a hook, right? You want to grab people early and get them invested in what you have to say. So strengthen the opening with a compelling hook. And you can see it has done that. Now let's say you read through it again and you realize that you want to leave them with a quote, something that sticks to them, sticks with them, and that will energize them going forward. So here you can see it's done that as well. So when you get the structure of the talk the way you want it, that's when you copy it to Word and start making it your own, which again you must do, or people will know and it will affect your reputation. So those are a few things that you might do as you traverse from a newbie to an experienced user. Now let's look at some of the things that will take you from an experienced user to an air quotes pro user. So we're going to look at refining global grant submissions. We're going to look at comparative assessments of global grants, and we'll look at some crisis proofing of messaging. So to start out, we'll look at global grants. Now, if you've run a global grant, you know that it takes quite a while to get one approved, and a lot of that has to do with the first 2 or 3 go-arounds between you and the via email between you and the global grant officer. And a lot of those are basic additions and clarifications, things that you probably ought to have known that they needed to be in there but didn't occur to you, or whatever. And the point of this first demo is that AI can help you tune an application so that you don't have, let's say, 3 go-rounds with that global grant officer. Maybe you only have 1. And those go-rounds, because of the fact that the global grant officers have a long queue in their inbox, can take 2 to 3 weeks. So that cuts an awful lot off the approval cycle of your global grant. So let's look at one. So here's a sample global grant application, and I want to thank Rotary District 7080 for having this on the web for general use, apparently. And you can see here, as we scroll through it, there's a pretty fair amount of information in here, okay? But what's missing? What needs clarification? What do we have to go deeper on? So what we're going to do is we are going to drag that global grant submission onto ChatGPT, add it, and now say, again, the role is global grant officer. The task is review this application. And here you can see we're starting to get that. And again, I want you to take note of the breadth of the kind of comments and suggestions and requests it has. The clarification, things that are missing. If you address these things, you will get a lot less back and forth with your global grant officer. So this is a great way of tuning your global grant application to decrease the cycle time of approval. Next, let's say you're a district governor or a Rotary Foundation committee chair in your district, and you have several global grant proposals that are in front of you, and you have to decide which ones and or how much DDF to allocate to each one. Now, your district may have a process for that, but the fact remains that this is a good example of prioritization and sort of comparative evaluation. So, we're going to look at three. There's borehole wells in northern Uganda. The second one is community midwife training in Guatemala. And the third one is a solar-powered sewing cooperative in India. Now, obviously, this information is fairly high level, but the fact remains that you could use all three. You could use the full proposals. So you copy them into ChatGPT, just drag and drop, and trust me that all three of them are there, and ask it to do an analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of each of them, or maybe just the weaknesses. So it reads the documents, it does the analysis, and you can see there were three documents there, as I said. So the weaknesses of the borehole wells, the weaknesses of midwife training, and the weaknesses of the sewing cooperative. So it's done an analysis, it understands the three different proposals, and now we're asking it to rank proposals by their alignment with Rotary's areas of focus, which it also understands because it's on the internet and it has read it. So here you can see the maternal and child health is ranked number 1, and there's the reason why. The Clean Water and Sanitation Project is second, and there's why. And the Solar-Powered Sewing Cooperative is ranked third, and there's why. So, not suggesting that you should have it make all of your decisions for you, but it is useful in helping you do an analysis when there's a lot of data to consume and process. So the next thing we're going to do, the next demo we're going to do, is actually ripped straight from the headlines of My District Governor Year. So let's say, hypothetically, you are in a Rotary Club that has been asked, it's a city Rotary Club, small town, and you have planned and executed the 4th of July parade for that town for the last 25 years. Because of the fact that politics is getting more contentious and less well behaved, I don't know if it ever was well behaved, but in any case, your city council asks you to ban floats from partisan organizations so that there's not jeering from the crowd and any potential for conflict. So you make the decision to of what the policy change is going to be, and you want to craft a press release. Now, there's a process in public relations called red teaming. And red teaming is let's say we're going to do a press release, and we know that it's going to anger some people, and they are going to paint it in the worst possible light they can to get public opinion steered in their direction and possibly, I don't know, reverse the decision, or at least discredit those making the decision. So you play the role of those people, and you figure out how they're going to paint what you put out, the press release, and you revise that press release so that it doesn't give them as good a hook to make the points that you think they're going to make. So let's look at that. Draft a press release announcing the exclusion of political party floats, allowing office holders to participate anyway. So here we go. Here's the press release. So now we're going to ask it to look at the vulnerabilities of this and decide what people are going to find offensive and or unfair. And you can see here as we scroll through, these are the hooks that are given to those let's call them bad actors. So now we revise it to limit the degree of vulnerability it has to that point of view. So the reality of this particular use case was that there were a number of go-arounds in fine-tuning that press release, but you can see from the demo how that process was done. So the next one is, let's say you have a whole lot of data and you need to digest it, come up with the key points that are in that data. In this particular demo, we have created a club satisfaction survey, not the gigantic one that's available through RI, but we've created sort of a condensed version of that. And it's got numerical responses, which are, you know, a statement, and then 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. We've also got a number of sort of free text responses where people kind of just type their opinions. We are going to ask it to highlight the top strengths and weaknesses that are shown in that survey, and then we're going to ask it to generate an action plan so that the issues that come up, particularly the weaknesses, we have a plan for addressing those weaknesses. Obviously, you can add to it ways of leveraging the strengths, but it's a demo, so we're only going to do the first one. So here's the survey. And you can see there are 1 through 5s, and as it scrolls, you'll see that there are free text questions that there are responses for. Now we've administered this survey. Each of the columns represents a question, each of the rows represents a respondent, and you can see there's a fair bit of data in here, and particularly since some free text responses are fairly lengthy, it's a little difficult to figure out what it's telling us. So we paste the survey and the responses into ChatGPT, and it knows how to put them together. And we give it a prompt asking it to evaluate this and tell us top strengths and weaknesses. So let's say with these themes here, we want it to present the results in relation to those themes. So what are the strengths and weaknesses centered around each of those themes that it found? And we want it to show how they connect to leadership development and so on. So again, it thinks and develops what we asked for. So leadership, transparency, and inclusion, member engagement and belonging, and the other 2 themes that it found. It kind of boils down all the results to those topics, or those themes rather. So the next thing we do is we want to come up with a plan for addressing some of the concerns that came out in this survey. And you'll see that for each of those themes, it comes up with a goal. How do we address this? And then several initiatives, 2 or more initiatives, describing who's going to do what and when. And again, for any one of these initiatives, you can drill down to get a more in-depth plan out of it all, but as you can see here, it's even on its first iteration, it's fairly serviceable. So advanced tools and beyond ChatGPT, there are a couple of things that, a couple of sort of, once you're a, you know, in air quotes, pro user, you can do a number of things. There's knowledge bases you can build and custom chatbots that you can build. Neither of them requires very much, if any, technical knowledge. And both are pretty powerful ways of leveraging AI to benefit all of your, let's say, district members. You probably wouldn't do this at the club level because it's not a trivial lift, but you would probably do this at the district level. So let's talk a little bit about knowledge bases. One of them is, there are two general ways of doing this, probably more, but two that we're going to talk about. One is that OpenAI, ChatGPT, offers what are called custom GPTs. And you upload reference documents into that, and at that point you can start asking it questions, which it will draw the answers from those reference documents. Google has a product called Notebook LM, and it's the same sort of thing. In fact, let's take a look at it. So what I've done here is I've created a District 6270 governance LM that draws from a whole slew of governance documents that govern our district. And now I've asked it for the succession plan for Rotary 6270's governor. So it's going to think for a while, and if you look on the right, you can see the different kinds of artifacts it's capable of creating. Those are the rectangles at the top, and at the bottom are some of the artifacts that I have created from it already. And as it thinks, take a look at the first one is the Rotary Rulebook. That's a video that describes how Rotary International is structured. The Rotary District Governor succession, that's about the selection process. Okay, we're getting results here. So what you're going to see, quite a lot of content, and if we scroll up to the top, you'll see that it takes this in two pieces. So the first is, what's the normal plan? How do we normally fill the DGND position, and then the DGN position, and the DGE position, and finally the DG position. And then it goes into, so what happens if there's a vacancy? And it talks about what happens if the DG office is vacant, all the way up through the RI board electing one. And then what happens if there's a vacancy in the DGE or DGN. So you can see it's a pretty thorough response, and the little numbers in the circles after each paragraph are the segments of the documents in which the material you're looking for is located. And if you click on them, it will give you more context and cite the document itself. And I want to show you a chatbot that is pretty easy to build and is actually out there. This is District 5080, their website. On the bottom right hand side you can see Rotary Rick bouncing around, and if you click on it you will get this interface. So let's ask, how do I get on my Rotary account? And you scroll up and there's your answer. Now let's say you want to know how, or I think it's when are district grants awarded? And you'll get an answer to that question. Now let's say, how can I apply? And you'll get an answer to that. Now let's say we want to know what are the requirements to be eligible. And you'll get an answer to that. Now, if you've read any of these, well, all but the first, if you've read the second through whatever, fourth or fifth response, you'll notice that it's a fairly generic answer. And I think that's because District 6080 viewed this as a proof of concept. And they are now, they have someone who is building a custom chatbot with ChatGPT in the front end and they're actually writing code to do it. But the point is that if you give it the right documents and spend the time to configure it properly, this approach that District 5080 used as their proof of concept can be a viable informational, kind of an FAQ chatbot that you can float on your district's webpage. So, what to do next? Learn. The downloads that you'll see in the next couple of slides contain a whole lot of material which is sort of curated for its usefulness. One in particular, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, is a website called prof.ai. And it contains a very straightforward course, and it's not long, on how to interact with a chatbot, essentially how to build a prompt. Experiment. Use the knowledge you get there. Pick a task that you do that's part of your Rotary role, or some other if you like, but in any case, pick something that you do that you'd like to see if you can automate via AI. Do it this month. Just because if you put it off, you'll keep putting it off. I know that I do. Share your successes and your failures. The successes will get people interested in using this tool, and the failures will show them the boundaries of this tool, show them how to avoid some of the problems that maybe you've run into. Connect. One of the things in the download is the AI Rotary Fellowship application process. Join the fellowship, have conversations with them. Most of the questions that you'll come up with for quite a while are questions that most of the folks in that AI group may know the answers to, and they may be able to give you answers and sort of speed you along in your ramping up on AI. Above all, most important, model responsible use. Check your facts, be ethical in how you use it, help others come on board in a way that's similar to what I'm suggesting here. And finally, read through the takeaway goodie bag, which again you'll see in a couple of pages. There's a lot of great information in there, and the internet is your friend. YouTube is your friend. There are so many videos out there about capabilities of AI. Great way to learn. So some of what's in the takeaway goodies, you can see on the left, as I said, the link to AI Rotary Fellowship online. There's a number of documents that are interesting to read, getting started with AI, Rotary prompts, use cases, and so on. But interestingly, on the right-hand side, there is the results of a study which talks about the top 100 ways that people use AI in 2025. And you probably can't read what's on the screen right now, but I'm guessing you can read this. So the first one, therapy and companionship, I found a little surprising and just a little bit, I don't know, concerning might be the word. Anyway, if you look at organize my life, find purpose, enhance learning, generate ideas, creativity, healthier living, there's a lot of stuff in there that you can directly or indirectly apply to your Rotary role. And so if you read all 100 and think about those, there's probably 30 or 40 things that can, if you take the time to do it, help you in your role as a Rotary leader. So in the presentation that we did on October 4th, we had a conversation. The QR code on the right-hand side of this slide is where you go to download the information that we prepared for you, or you can do the URL at the bottom right-hand side. One of the things that came out in the discussion that I do want to share is Bruce Nearhood, who is the past district governor and the current district governor of Rotary District 5610, which is primarily South Dakota, but also Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska, little chunks of each of those states. said that he was looking for a speaker on a particular fairly esoteric topic. And he asked ChatGPT for some suggestions of who might make a good speaker on that. And long story short, it had lots of suggestions. He picked the first three. Two of them were ideal and interested in doing the talk, and he ended up landing a great speaker for an event he was putting together, and with very little effort having to have been outlaid. So that's another use case that you maybe can take forward. So at that, this concludes the content that was delivered on October 4th in Minnesota. So thank you for attending.